Hey guys, I'm Randy.
And I'm Daniel.
We're two lifelong friends and musicians, but when we're not playing gigs, we like to talk games.
And today on the Game and Gig podcast, we're talking about Tears of the Kingdom gameplay and the morality of emulation.
So a little bit of a two-parter episode today, but both are related to Nintendo because first we're going to be talking about Tears of the Kingdom, then later on in the show we're going to be talking about emulation and the morality of emulation. And this is kind of spurred on by the fact that the Wii U shop, eShop, and the 3DS eShop have closed down, meaning that some of these Nintendo games, there's no legal way to purchase them anymore.
That's right.
So,
oh no.
But we'll talk more about emulation in a little bit. But first, I know we're like a week out, but this is what happens. Nintendo, they always want to post their stuff right after we do the podcast. Mm-hmm. So the day after we posted last week's podcast, we got Tears of the Kingdom gameplay footage.
Yeah, I think it's an intentional effort on the part of the Nintendo ninjas to sabotage the punctuality of our podcast as it relates to current news.
Right. They want us to be a week behind. But we can't not talk about Tears of the Kingdom.
Well, I mean, we can. We'll just explode.
Right. We would die. There would be no podcast anymore because we would have exploded.
And before we get into that, I just want to point out that if you hear any little sweet meows during this podcast, that's just our co-host. I got a new kitty, and he's currently quarantined from my other kitty because he is finishing up some dewormer, and he likes to talk. He's in another room, but he might make an appearance vocally.
We might hear him.
Yeah.
So if you hear anybody, deciding they want to add their 2 cents about either Tears of the Kingdom or emulation, we know who it is.
That's just a little Guster Buster.
Old Guster Buster. So, put out a poll asking which new ability in Tears of the Kingdom is your favorite. And there are 4 new abilities. We have Recall, Fuse, Ultra Hand, and Ascend. And the results were, hit us with them, Daniel.
At 7%, people said Recall. At 67%, people said Fuse. At 7%, people said Ultra Hand. And at 19%, people said Ascend.
So, I think Fuse being the main one makes sense because I think that's the one that's the biggest, game changer. Basically, you're going to be able to combine whatever you see laying around. You can just combine those things together. You can fuse them, and now it can be a weapon or, who knows? You saw in the gameplay thing, we saw them combining with shields, combining 2 weapons together to get a longer reach, combining 2 non-weapons together to create a weapon. There are lots of possibilities with that.
Endless possibilities.
Yeah.
Honestly, they're just going full sandbox on this thing.
Right, full-on sandbox.
Yeah.
Now, the question I have with Fuse is, I don't think we ever saw more than 2 things getting fused together.
I don't think we did.
So the question is can you fuse more than 2 things together?
I wonder if at some point you upgrade your ability and then you can. That would be very Zelda.
Yeah. My thought is if they're going to, from a programming aspect, the more things you allow to be fused together, the more options you have to build into the game. So it might be like the mathematics behind it. It starts to be exponential growth the more things you can fuse together. So maybe I don't know, maybe it wouldn't make sense to be able to fuse more than 2 things together in terms of just being able to program it and make sure it all makes sense and all has functions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to make a super long pitchfork with a rock on the end that I can throw.
Right.
And it would home in.
Right.
I would like that. Those homing arrows were awesome.
That was very cool. That was part of the fuse ability, right? Because that was fusing a Keese eyeball and an arrow.
Yeah, and that's so cool because the monster parts, and you have no shortage of monster parts.
At least in Breath of the Wild, there wasn't.
Yeah, they didn't have a ton of utility.
No, you could use them in your cooking, and you could make potions and things.
I gave them to the guy that little kind guy that comes around at night. I gave them to him mostly, but
yeah. Now, Ultra Hand is just the ability to pick up things and move them together, and kind of build stuff.
Yeah, so that one doesn't involve fuse when you build the boat.
No,
okay.
That's a different ability. They're similar, but they're different. Ultra Hand is I guess more for constructing things, whereas fuse seems to be primarily weapon related, or defense related. At least that's what I got from what we saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That surprises me that so few people said Ultra Hand.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be building all kinds of stuff.
Me too.
I'm pretty excited about that, but maybe just fuse seemed more appealing. Because it's a weapon. It's a thing you can use, whereas the Ultra Hand is maybe more optional. Like more,
Right.
because we had a little bit of that in Breath of the Wild. You had a little bit of being able to combine stuff together, like had the Octorok balloons and being able to add those and make like a flying contraption. So we had a little bit of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it seems
This
like
seems a lot
this
cooler.
is the next level for sure.
And I'm surprised that so few people said. I'm surprised that Ascend was 19% and Recall was 7%, because Recall seems like the primary way we're going to access the newest parts of the map, and that's a big deal to me. Whereas Ascend,
It's just kind of
I don't really
climbing.
get it yet.
Yeah, it's kind of like you don't. Maybe it's just because climbing was such a hot topic that the people didn't like always having to climb constantly and running out of stamina and stuff. Maybe with Ascend, they're like, oh, thank God, I don't have to climb everything now. Maybe I can just ascend up through it. Maybe it's just a quality of life thing that people are looking forward to.
I mean, I understand the stamina management aspect of the climbing, but the climbing was so cool.
Yeah, you climb. Man, I'm sure it's still.
I'm still going to climb stuff.
Yeah, it's still going to be cool, but it's just interesting to think of all the options. I think the recall thing. I wonder if there's going to be more to that than what we saw, because one, I think that right now it seems pretty basic. Like they showed it using it to get up to a sky island.
Yeah.
And we've also seen in earlier trailers where it was used on a boulder that was rolling down a hill and then get it to go back up and hitting enemies. But we really haven't seen many things that it could be used for. So I'm wondering if there's more to that they just haven't shown yet.
There's got to be.
Yeah. And plus the name Recall is kind of weird. You'd think like
Rewind. Maybe.
Rewind would be a better name, but Recall makes me think like, what? Can you like bring things to you? Can you use it to like maybe like a weapon that you've thrown? Can you bring it back to you or something crazy like that?
Maybe.
And that may be like more of the recall aspect. Because there are a lot of things. You could throw weapons in Breath of the Wild, but then they're away from you. What if you could throw them and then get them to come back to you?
Well, that's interesting. Because there's no boomerang.
Wow. So, I mean, like...
Give me a boomerang, by the way.
There were boomerangs.
Oh, there were boomerangs. I'm wrong. Yeah, I was just thinking about Link's, like, classic boomerang. But yeah, you're right. There was the...
Yeah,
there was all sorts of boomerangs.
There was a number of
played that game forever.
It's been many years.
Yeah.
When you said there's no boomerangs, I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, no, they were totally boomerangs.
Yeah, well...
There just wasn't the boomerang.
Before we move on to the comments...
I think I might... Sorry, I didn't mean to...
No, go ahead.
I think I might be confusing, in my mind, thinking there was no boomerangs. I think I was actually thinking how there's no hook shot. I think that's what I was thinking.
There is no hook shot.
Yeah, but I don't really need a hook shot. I'm not really asking for a hook shot.
And you could throw like any weapon in Breath of the Wild, but only the boomerangs came back.
Yeah. And you had to catch them.
Yeah, it's
that was
cool.
fun.
But before we move on to the comments on this poll, I wanted to ask you: did this gameplay trailer? Because now I'm assuming that the hook, the kind of the gimmick, is that there's going to be all these opportunities to build things and put things together, and it's kind of like a very creative sort of game. At least it seems to be. Does that make you more or less excited to play the game?
Definitely more excited.
Yeah,
because it's that's stuff that Breath of the Wild didn't have, and I didn't want it to play just like Breath of the Wild. Like now we know the thing.
Right.
What's the thing? Breath of the Wild's thing was that it's open world.
It was it was an open world Zelda game.
Tears of the Kingdom's thing is that you can do anything in an open world.
Right. They've obviously very much embraced the like sandbox, do what you want, make your own fun sort of deal. But obviously there will still be a storyline and stuff to go through, I'm assuming.
Well,
but,
of course.
But kind of like Breath of the Wild, you would always get distracted from the main story because there was so much to do. I think this might be even more in that direction, which is what made Breath of the Wild so amazing, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason why, it may have taken 20 hours to play through the game if you just mainline the story, but no one did that. Everyone's got like over 100, 200 hours in the game because they keep getting distracted by all these amazing things you can do. So...
Yeah, I think this game is just going to turn that up to 11.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have here in the comments, we have Tatiana. I mean, I don't know how to pronounce this.
Tatiana. No, man. You're adding an extra I.
Oh.
It's Titania.
Titania. I did add an extra letter. Fuse. But I want to point out the possibility of using recall on something you've made on Ultra Hand could be useful for puzzle solving or making traps for enemies. So I'm not sure that I completely understand here. I need like more of an explanation. What do you think's going on? What do you think they're saying here? Like recall something that you've made. Like, can you make something and then disassemble it and then recall it back to being made? Is that what's being said here?
Maybe.
Like you could make like a little trap and then take it apart,
come together,
and then somehow recall it back together.
That seems like
I don't know if they're going to
Seems a
allow
little convoluted.
I don't know if they're going to allow you to use recall in something that you've made.
I don't think you'll be able to recall multiple parts of something like that. You might be able to assemble something and then disassemble it, maybe.
I don't know. I would be interested in. If you end up watching this podcast, elaborate more and let us know exactly what you're talking about, because I think you probably have a good idea. I just don't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Here's from the next one, Daniel.
Hyper Nova Gaming Station said, fusing is the only thing that looks compelling. The rest just looks like Breath of the Wild DLC.
Ooh. Yeah, I don't completely agree. I mean, with all due respect, I understand what you're saying. Like, Fuse is definitely the big game changer, I think. And something like Ascend, okay, I could see that maybe being something that was added in a DLC or something. But I think even the Ultra Hand and maybe to a lesser degree Recall feel very like fresh.
Yeah, Ultra Hand, I'm just as excited about as Fuse.
Yeah, I think building crafts or building all kinds of stuff.
I want to build one of them hot air balloon things. The Link was flying out.
That was pretty cool.
That looks pretty cool.
Yeah. We've already seen it, like being able to build things that you can move around in water, move around land, move around the sky. Like, that seems pretty cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess you could say that they could have made like a Breath of the Wild DLC that added these new Sheikah Slate abilities or whatever. But I don't know if it would be that easy.
So these are not Sheikah Slate abilities, right? Because Link doesn't have the Sheikah Slate anymore, and everything we've seen. Yeah. Apparently, like, Zelda has the Sheikah Slate, which brings up a whole like can of worms of, is Zelda going to be playable? And will Zelda have the old abilities, and Link has these new abilities? And like, I don't know. We haven't seen anything about Zelda being a playable character.
I mean, Link probably just has a lot to do, and so he wasn't going to get to play his Switch, so he just loaned it to Zelda. That's probably all it is, man.
He loaned her his tablet? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's funny. No.
You know Link would be happy to loan Zelda his tablet.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He's a bro like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're getting at here, but before we move away from... or move on to our next thing, I want to tell you guys about our Twitch. Now, you may know about our Twitch channel and have been there before, but we stream on Twitch on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
Except yesterday.
Except when the stars don't align. But we are there on Twitch, and right now we're playing like Sea of Thieves, Rocket League, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So come hang out with us. We stream at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yep.
Hang out with us on Twitch.
Twitch.tv/gaminggig.
That's the one. Gaming Gig, all words.
All words, baby.
Okay.
All right, we asked the people, do you ever emulate video games? Hit us with the results, Randall.
Yeah. We got 36% of people saying they do emulate on PC, 11% on a handheld, 16% on a phone, and then 37% of people saying they do not emulate games.
Wow.
So the majority of people do emulate games and all kinds of things. I mean, like, I don't have a whole lot of experience emulating video games. I'll be honest with you. I have done a little bit of emulation on phone, specifically playing some old Pokemon games.
Yep.
And that's about the extent of it.
Yeah, I've done all this.
You've done all of them, all the things.
All the things, except for not.
Except for not.
Yeah, so... I mean, I'm not surprised because it's so convenient. It's such a great way to play these games. And, you know, we can open up the can of worms whenever you want about whether or not you should. But.
Right. And I kind of do want this to be based on, like, is it moral to emulate games? Because we talk about the whole thing that spurred this is that Nintendo has closed down the Wii U and 3DS eShops. So a lot of games, you don't have an option. There's no legal way to buy them. They're not on the... the NSO, like Nintendo Switch Online. A lot of those old retro games are there, but a lot of them are not.
True.
So if you want to play those games, Nintendo's not going to sell them to you. And the question is, if Nintendo isn't willing to sell it, and no one's losing any money on this, it's not like you're buying it, you know, in a way that someone's losing out on making money.
It's not like you're buying it from someone else. I mean, it's not like somebody else is making that money.
Or it's like no one's making money, but they should have made money if you had bought it the legal way. It's like no one's doing that. Like no one's missing out. Like, so is it moral to emulate video games? And I think that when we're talking about video games that where there is no option, I don't see an issue with it.
Well, I clearly don't either. But I think some people get a little confused on whether or not something like I think they mix up illegal and immoral. And we're talking immoral.
Right, immoral. The morality of it.
And we're not going to tell you where to go get ROMs. That's your business.
Right.
All of our ROMs came directly from our own cartridges that we ripped to our computers. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But, yeah, I'm with you. But I would say, okay, Disney... Well, recently with Disney Plus, you can watch most of these old movies. But for a long time, Disney had this thing going called the Disney Vault. Mm-hmm. And they would like bring movies in and out of the vault, and you couldn't buy like say they put The Lion King in the vault. You couldn't find The Lion King places. Like you couldn't buy it. Mm-hmm. And then they would bring it back out and people would buy it, right? Would it have been okay to like pirate that movie when it was in the vault?
That's a great question. I mean, like, because really at that point, your only option in terms of being able to purchase it is purchasing it from a used copy from just like some dude,
Mm-hmm. Or like the Star Wars trilogy, the original, unadulterated, unbastardized Star Wars trilogy. Mm-hmm. You can only get that on like some crazy like extra disc on this like certain DVD box set that they sold like back in the day that it's like hundreds and hundreds of bucks on eBay now. Or you could pirate it.
Right.
But Lucasfilm ain't going to sell you that.
Yeah. So you make a good point. Like, and I want to say that like it's these companies. I'm assuming it's their, they can choose to not sell things if they don't want to sell something. I mean, yeah, okay, they don't want to sell it.
Right.
They don't have to sell things. It's not like
that's right.
They're promising to sell it forever and ever. But if they're not selling it and you want to kind of play it like a game that you want to play, I don't think it's immoral at all to emulate them. Now, I do think things start to get a little gray when we're talking about like, say it's a game that is available on Nintendo Switch Online, and that's the way they want you to access and play that game. Would it, at that point, would it be immoral to emulate a game that is on NSO?
Now, when you're saying immoral to emulate, I'm assuming you mean immoral to get the ROM.
Not to emulate, I shouldn't say. Because you're right. Because
Nintendo themselves are emulating.
Right. No, exactly. Not that. I mean to get a copy of the ROM that you have not paid for.
Yeah.
And then play the game and then,
Yeah.
Right. A game that you could have access to if you were, willing to pay for some sort of service.
Yeah. I think it's important to draw that line because I don't think people realize like...
No, like emulation itself is not... Yeah.
Yeah.
Nintendo NSO, when you're playing an N64 game or a SNES game, you're playing it through emulation on the Switch. Mm-hmm. Right. So emulating itself is not an issue. I
actually learned something recently from the Nintendo podcast, as a matter of fact, because they were talking emulation like a week or two ago. Bob brought up that apparently back in the PS1 days, you may have heard about this. I think I had briefly heard about it before he mentioned it. But anyway, there was this dude who like got his PS1 or whatever, got his games or whatever, and then he got on a computer and designed a PS1 emulator. And then he went to Sony and he said, hey, I made this thing. And Sony was like, we don't want you to have this. Like, you can't do that. And they sued him and apparently lost the suit, which is what set the precedence for why, like, all these handheld emulators are legal.
Right.
Like the actual hardware themselves.
Is like as long as it is like an emulation, not like an exact copy of.
And I'm sure I left out a ton of details there, but that's what I remember.
That's interesting.
That was interesting. If you want to, Bob told it in more detail, but that was really interesting.
It is interesting. But let's see here. We got some comments about emulating here. We got Celeria Rose saying, yes, it's how I've played a lot of the Dragon Quest and Harvest Moon games since I'm bad with handheld systems. The small screens give me headaches and eye strain issues. Though I generally try and follow a self-imposed guideline where games I emulate, I do my best to own a copy of the game as well. And I don't think anyone can argue that if you own a copy of the game, you should be able to get a ROM and emulate it on whatever device you want. I mean, you own the game.
Nintendo says you shouldn't.
That's about ridiculous.
You have to rip the ROM yourself. It has to be your game.
Speaking of that, I want to jump to the very last comment we have from Manny, who said, "Nice try, Nintendo." we're Nintendo's putting out this poll trying to catch people.
We're the Nintendo ninjas in disguise.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Celeria Rose, and I think that's very noble to try to own a copy of every game you emulate. Mm-hmm. But then that, my brain immediately goes to, what if you want to play Earthbound? I mean, it's on NSO, and that's great.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for a really long time.
Right. And that's the question, is like, now that it is available, like, does it change the morality behind it?
And it is expensive to buy a copy of Earthbound.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I mean, I think that is great. And I really like to do that too. I've played ROMs that I ripped from games that I owned but then lost. And liked it so much that I went and bought a copy. Like, I've done that.
Right. So next we got Brody here. Brody saying, "I've played a ton of Pokemon ROM hacks in the last decade or so on a few Android devices and PC. Some of the games created by fans have more love put in them than Game Freak has in the past 7 to 8 years too."
Spitting.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, like, ROMs give you the option to with ROM hacks. Mm-hmm. Now, you've played some ROM hacks. I don't think I've ever played any.
I played one. I really like the idea of ROM hacks. I just haven't really ever gotten into them. Mm-hmm. But I did play a little bit of that one Pokemon ROM hack, and it's super cool. They take the popular one to mod is Fire Red, and they'll take Fire Red and just turn it into like crazy stuff. I mean, it's really cool.
All right, here's with Elgato's comment here, Daniel.
All right, Elgato. I used to emulate games on my PC and my old phone. I actually still have the phone I used for emulation.
Have you done any phone emulation? Mm-hmm. That's all I've done.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to do on iPhone.
I did it back in the day. I did this like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to do these days.
It may be harder now than it was
I've
back
done
in the
it,
day. Yeah.
But it's not easy.
No. I think there's some like browser-based emulation that you can do on phones.
Yeah, I think there probably is.
Yeah.
I have an app. Mm-hmm. But it's a little janky.
Yeah, I feel like I remember having to like jailbreak my iPhone or something to be able to like install like a third-party app that was not approved on the App Store and do some like crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, you don't have to jailbreak it always to do it. You have to. It's like a developer mode kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I haven't done that. I found one that worked without having to do it, but a lot of people do that.
Yeah, I remember that the emulator that I used on my iPhone worked for like 6 months, and then like one day it randomly stopped working, and it was because
it's probably because it hadn't refreshed or whatever on the, because that thing that I'm talking about, it has to like connect every so often and like be like, oh yeah, you're still good.
Oh really?
I wonder if it just you didn't open it or something.
Maybe it may have been, yeah. I don't know, but this was, like I said, I'd say it was probably 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Okay, next we got Miss Foe, who said, "I use a dedicated emulation handheld for older games, my Xbox Series for GameCube/Wii/PS2 emulation, and I have a few of my favorite games like Pokemon, Silent Hill 3, and Need for Speed Underground 2 on my phone for convenience." And this makes me think, I know like when the Xbox Series systems came out, a big thing that was like immediately like people were excited about was that you can emulate on them fairly easily without having to do much.
Mm-hmm. I haven't done that. But it would be a great emulator. It sure is powerful.
Right. So. Yeah, it could definitely probably easily emulate things like she mentioned like GameCube, Wii, and PS2. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you can emulate Switch on the Xbox, on the Series X or something.
I don't know. That's something I haven't done yet.
I know emulating Switch is tough. I haven't
emulated any Switch.
And that makes me feel like, like when we're talking about consoles and games that are no longer in production, like I don't really... Like I said, I don't have much of an issue. I think I have a little bit of a gray area if it's available in like some way through like NSO or something, But new games, like if I would feel, I don't know, I just would feel icky emulating a game that's like a new game that's out right now. And I like, that being said, when I was like, when I was younger and I was like, I had no money and I was like a teenager, I definitely like, pirated like software and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't feel, I mean, maybe I did feel bad about it, but I had no option.
You were probably more worried about getting in trouble than actually feeling bad.
Right, yeah. But I had no money. It wasn't an option. Like I wasn't going to be able to afford that software and stuff.
What if you bought a new game and then you wanted to play it elsewhere?
No issue. I think it's, for me, it's only, I would personally feel a little weird if it was a game that I knew, like, I could buy this and play it, but I'm just choosing not to.
Like if you bought the Nintendo or the Metroid Prime remaster, but then decided you wanted to play it on your Steam Deck.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I know people are doing that.
Go for it. Why not?
Yeah.
I
see no reason why not.
Yeah, I don't see either. I mean, you own the license to play it.
Yeah.
So, like, why not play it wherever you want to play it?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I've heard, though, is that getting Switch ROMs can be a little tricky because the websites are a little pop-up ridden, more so than maybe some other places. That's what I've heard.
That's what you've heard. You've heard that.
I've heard that on YouTube.
Yes, from other people.
Anyway, we got a comment from Cult of Weirdnessable.
Weirdness Able?
Cult of Weirdnessable.
Yeah.
Cult of Weirdnessable.
I don't know. That sounds good to me.
I beat Contra for the first time on an Android tablet and a Bluetooth controller. Did you use the cheat code so that you couldn't die? That's my only question, because nobody beat Contra.
Nobody beats Contra. I've never even played Contra. That's just the one that you always hear people talking about. Never played it once.
I played the ROM a little bit, and it's stupid hard.
Yeah.
Stupid
Instantly
hard.
die, that sort of thing.
I think it's a one-hit death kind of thing.
We got Grub fan of Grubs, saying, I've emulated Hollow Knight on my phone, and that's it.
Slimy yet satisfying.
That's right. Hollow Knight is also slimy yet satisfying, I hear. I haven't played it.
That's a good game.
Yeah.
It's also still widely available.
Right. No, it's true. It's true.
All right, we got Caleb here. Old Punchy Punch himself says, yeah, I have emulators on my phone, computer, and even some older modded consoles. It's a super convenient way to experience great games, especially if you don't have the means to play them. Like if you're a kid without much money, or the game you want to play is really expensive or hard to find, without a modern platform to play them on. I'm looking at you, Nintendo.
Right. I mean, I think that one thing you touch on here is if you just don't have the money to play, I mean, like, I hate for people not to be able to experience games just because they can't afford it.
Then buy it for him, Randy.
Get in touch with me, you know. We'll see what we can do.
I agree completely with what Caleb's saying here. But are we just justifying our own piracy here? I mean,
I don't. I should say, like, when I was young, I did pirate some software. I don't remember pirating any video games, although I probably did. But I didn't emulate them. I probably just, like, figured out where to get a PC, like, what is it, like the key crack, where you can get an authorization key for a game. I probably did that.
Yeah.
Back when I had no money to play video games. But
because I mean, like, if you take the argument, like, well, you know, that kid doesn't have any money, they can pirate that. Well, where does that stop?
Where does it? Yeah, where's
that
the
kid
line?
doesn't have any money. They can steal that car. You know.
Yeah. Okay.
That kid doesn't have any money. They can rob this bank. Like. You know, I mean, and I, for the record here, I love emulation. I just feel like I've taken the devil's advocate stance here.
Well, at the same time, it's like, you know, it's just tough. I really do think it's tough. Like, I don't think I would personally, you know, get ROMs and emulate currently available games. But I just don't know, man. It's tough. We got Hybrid Real saying, I'm so cool, I emulate on my Xbox.
You are cool.
That is cool. That's slick.
That is slick. We got a comment from Tom Derry saying, I might have a few extra games on my SNES Classic. And who doesn't love LTTP Randomizer?
Might have a few extra games. I might. You know, maybe.
I used to have a roommate that had a few extra games on his SNES Classic.
He might have.
No, he did.
No, he did. Yeah, I mean, like, that was a big thing with those, right? Same thing with the whatever the PS1, the whatever Sony called that little PlayStation 1 device. What did they call that? Was it it wasn't called the PlayStation Classic, was it? Surely not.
I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about, right? The little PlayStation PS1.
Did they make a mini one?
Yeah.
Okay,
little PlayStation Mini.
There's so many of those mini ones out. I didn't remember
the
PlayStation did one.
It flopped hard, man. Oh. It flopped really hard. But I think people have kind of come around to it because you could use it to emulate other PlayStation games pretty easily. Yeah.
All right.
You want to do this one here? Aneo Smith?
Sure. I'll do two in a row.
Yeah.
Aneo Smith 9505 says on PSP back then. I miss back then.
Now I'm assuming on PSP you're going to be emulating like old handheld stuff, like Game Boy Advance, stuff like that.
Yeah, it could probably. It might be able to do PS1. I don't know.
On PSP, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of feel
PS1 is not that hard to emulate.
Oh, okay. I just figured PSP wouldn't be. I know like emulation is much more taxing on like something like that. So I don't know what you could emulate using a PSP. I just wouldn't think that a PS1. I would think like, just old handheld stuff. Game Boy Advance. What you finding out?
It can be emulated, but the PSP only had 2 shoulder buttons, whereas the PS1 had 4.
Right.
So,
So it doesn't really work.
You have to do some button mapping gymnastics.
So is it like it's not a power thing? It's just you just don't have enough buttons.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
But you also have a stick, and the PS1 didn't. So people were saying you kind of
at least the original PlayStation 1, we did get the DualShock controller was on PS1, but that was like later on. The original PlayStation controller had the D-pad only.
99% of games will work, and when they do, they're perfect as its native emulation from Sony.
Oh, interesting.
I thought it could.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I guess if it's native emulation, because I guess PSP I guess there were PS1 games that you could play on PSP.
Oh yeah.
See, that's something I just wasn't aware of. I've not really spent much time with the PSP. So,
all right.
Next we got Miguel GC Gamer here, the old GameCube fan, saying Dolphin on my computer. Of course, Dolphin. Mm-hmm. You can't be a GameCube fan without getting Dolphin. To record GameCube games and NES to DS on my homebrew 3DS.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, jailbreaking your 3DS is a cool thing.
I heard it's not that hard.
Yeah, Retro Game Core. Is that his name? Yeah, Retro Game Core. His name is Russ. His YouTube channel is Retro Game Core. Mm-hmm. He's about to do some 3DS jailbreak stuff because the 3DS store closed, and now he said he feels okay about doing it.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like if you literally can't find anyone to give money to, like a company to give money to buy this game, like. I'm not saying that, there's always options to buy used, but the used market is insane. Like,
it is.
Sometimes it's like straight up criminal. Like, it's more of a crime, the prices they would want you to pay to buy a copy of a used game than it would be to emulate it. Like, way more criminal.
But is Nintendo required to sell these games, to sell every game they've ever made forever?
Well, and that's...
Are they obligated to, make it playable on something forever?
I kind of... No, obviously, I don't think so. But I kind of wish that there was, I don't know. And I understand I'm talking about government stepping in and saying regulating this or something. But
yeah.
I kind of wish there was a minimum amount of years. That way you could know hey, I'm going to have access to this game for this many years. Because it's not just about being able to buy it. Lots of times it's about the game being supported in the first place. With multiplayer games, once those servers go down, the game is gone. Mm-hmm. The game has an expiration date, essentially, which is crazy. So, if shops and games are having this, expiration date that's set by the company, it hasn't even been that long since the Wii U came out, or the 3DS.
Yeah. So you're saying, what I thought you were saying when you said a certain number of years was that, a certain number of years after it's not being sold, it's, public domain. You could just, get it and use it.
No, I'm saying that, I wish that when a new game came out,
They said
it's going to be available for at least this minimum number of years. That way people who are waiting to buy it or wanting to buy it, they kind of know they have a time frame in their head of when they need to do it by.
Well, we knew this 3DS store was going to close for a year.
I know, but it hasn't even been around that long.
No, it hasn't. But they did give people heads up.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying they completely screwed everybody, but it kind of feels like, there's people who just got into 3DS. I just got a 3DS in 2019.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've only had a 3DS for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So someone like me who has had very little time with a 3DS, and I get that I was late to the game, but still.
Literally.
I don't know. Maybe my thoughts aren't as worked out as I would like them to be, but still, that's what having this conversation is about.
Right.
Yeah.
And, it takes a long time to rip the ROM off every game I own. So I've had a lot of time to sit and reflect.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
While I was just watching that screen, just fill that little bar up and say, okay, here's your copy of that Pokemon ROM hack.
That Pokemon ROM hack.
Anyway.
You were trying to think of what could I have ripped a ROM from that I can't rip a ROM from.
Yes, exactly. All right, Manny Benitez. So,
that's the same one.
Oh, we already said that. Nice try, Nintendo.
Nice try, Nintendo. All right.
Gotcha, Manny.
Before we move on to the last section of the podcast, which is the 3 for Dale Club teaser there. Mm-hmm. Before we do that, Daniel, tell the folks out there about our Discord community.
Well, we have a Discord community, and it is rapidly growing. I mean, I don't want to spout any statistics at you, but it is in the top 100% fastest growing Discord servers on Discord. Mm-hmm. It's a small but rabid community. Literally, like, people over there are afraid to drink water because they have rabies.
Yeah, they're foaming at the mouth.
They call it hydrophobia for a reason. Mm-hmm. Go watch Old Yeller on Disney Plus. Don't pirate it. But yeah, we have a Discord link in our descriptions of these videos. Go ahead and join it. Come talk games with us. You get stream notifications when we go live on Twitch. It's a good thing to do.
Come hang out with us on Discord. All right, 3 for Dale Club. You've made it to the end of this podcast, and we want to celebrate you and, make sure that I don't know, what do we do? I'm trying to think of how to say this.
We shout them out.
Yeah, I was thinking of something of a weird way to say that, but I couldn't think of the way I wanted to say it.
Dispatches from Myrtle Beach calls it a holler out.
A holler out.
Mm-hmm. Holler out.
I was trying to think of it, make it more special than just saying that we shout you out. But we want to shout you out at the end of the next podcast. And the way you can let us know that you made it to the end of this podcast is by putting a comment, and somewhere in the comment, just put 3 for Dale. That's all you have to do. If you do that, we'll shout you out at the end of the next podcast. But this week, hit us with our 3 for Dale numbers.
We have a true 3 for Dale club with 3 people leading off the bunch. He's the leader of the crew. He's coming for you. Anyway, that's a DK wrap. It's Landon Stallings.
Landon Stallings.
We love you, Landon.
And we also got Guy back again. Guy, you've been a trooper lately. Thank you so much.
Heck yeah. And we got Punchy Punch, a.k.a. Caleb,
who has also been a trooper.
He has.
Tell him, we got the best community, guys. But we want you to be a part of our 3 for Dale Club next week. If you weren't this week, we want you to be there, okay?
Heck yeah.
So until next time, guys, I'm Randy.
Which makes me Daniel.
And this has been Gaming Gig.
Peace out.